You're listening to the Men After God podcast, the show dedicated to empowering men to navigate life's challenges through the lens of faith. In this episode, we'll tackle real-world issues that matter, from leadership and personal growth to marriage, fatherhood, and balancing career and family. Join us as we explore insightful conversations and practical advice to help you thrive as a man after God's own heart.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Men After God podcast. I'm here with Luke today, and I can't wait to begin this new series with you out of Ecclesiastes, talking about different seasons of life and embracing God's rhythms in manhood. Life is seasonal, not just with fall, summer, winter, and spring, but in the things that we go through and what we deal with. At different stages or seasons of life, every man is in similar ones, and some are in complete different ones. But what's important to know is that there are going to be highs, there are going to be lows, and both are okay. Luke, you know a lot about going through highs and lows in life. Talk about why it's okay to experience these.
Well, I don't even know how to answer that question. That's actually a really good question. I might need a couple minutes to think about because
you're the one who wanted to go with no prep conversation.
Yeah.
And just jump into it. So here we are.
Yeah, no, I think it is crucial when you think about self-reflection. And if you've read any of John Maxwell's books in the growth book, it talks about some of the questions you're supposed to reflect on and ask yourself. And one of those ones is, what's my highest high and what's my lowest low? And when you reflect on those moments, what you get is a balance of the good and the bad. And I think that as we're going through the highs and lows of seasons, you know, it's we talk about leadership and how great it is when a leader's going through the high and everything's momentum, everything's great. Are they even really leading? Right? Do I need a leader at that point? And the answer is yes. And then you go to the lowest low of when things are difficult. One, it makes you extremely grateful, gives you a very healthy perspective of the good, but also there's a season for it, meaning that there are times when you're going through life where the low is what's going to draw you close to God. You know, mountaintops are beautiful, but things don't grow there. You grow in the valley times. And so as we're looking at the highs of seasons and the lows of seasons, there's going to be some stories I'm sure we're going to tell that are going to be prompted just based on this conversation, because I've been through some low seasons. But I'll tell you what, my low seasons weren't low like when people's like, okay, what's your lowest season in life? Well, if you know me, if you know anything about my life, there's certain areas of my life that are harder. They're like even harder to talk about. They're grief moments, whatever the case. But they weren't low seasons. They were hard seasons with spiritual highs, right? And on the flip side, I've gone through some very, very mountaintop moments that spiritually, while the mountaintop felt good, the spiritual aspect of it wasn't forcing me to grow or challenging me. So I want to, as we're looking at the seasons, understand there's so much more to it than just, is it a good season? Is it a bad season? No, is it a God season? And am I giving God the glory in this season? If I'm on the mountaintop, am I giving God the glory? If I'm climbing the mountain, am I giving God the glory? Or if I'm at the valley where I'm walking through the valley of the shadow of death, God's still going to get the glory. It's just a matter of how do I get to be a part of the glorification of God, or is God going to use me to glorify him? It can be good and bad. So I'm looking for the unprompted conversation. I'm going to think of a very hard question to ask Dustin to get him on his toes. So
it won't take you too long to figure one of those out, I'm sure. Why are we talking about seasons?
What is your name? No, just kidding. So,
Hey, I get a gold star if I get that right.
Yes.
As we were looking at Ecclesiastes, we were talking about after we turned off the recording a week or two ago, and realized we wanted to enter this conversation. So the first verse we're going to talk about is Ecclesiastes 3:3, where the Bible says that there's a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up. The first part of that can sound intense, but we are going to focus on the latter part for this episode today, when we're going to talk about when you should deconstruct, when you should tear down, and when you should build up, and why both are important in your lives. So, look, I was having a conversation. I just got a call yesterday from a man who is in a season of life. His message to me before our call was, I'm in a season I never thought I would be in. And I read it and I'm thinking, oh, wow, I hope he's rejoicing. He wasn't. It was an unfortunate one where his wife is leaving him, and there's kids involved, and it's kind of been going on for a long time. And there was a lot to that. And I bring this up because I think that's a time where many guys can begin to think, I need to rebuild my life. I've got to become this person. I've got to become who she wants me to be. And maybe she'll come back to me. I've got to become who the next woman wants me to be, and all these. But I think that's actually a time to tear down.
This is good.
And it's not, the person is already tore down. So anytime you face a traumatic event, anytime, guys, you're going through it or something's coming up, we have this tendency to want to fight through, to want to grow, want to rebuild, however it may look. And it reminds me of, I think it's called Newtonian fluid. Luke, have you ever heard of that? I think it's Newtonian fluid, Newtonian liquid.
Another hard question. Another hard question. No, I've not heard of it. No.
I went to my nerd space here. Okay. I think it's called Newtonian fluid. And Newtonian fluid is a liquid that if you are moving on, you can stay on top of.
Oh,
However,
yeah. Okay.
If you stop moving, you'll sink into it. Okay. And if you get someone on top of that they want to keep moving because they want to stay on top of it, right? And actually, I saw a Dude Perfect video the other day where the twins were on there and they were they were moving up and down this Newtonian fluid, taking half court shots, and it was first one to make the half court shot wins. The one who lost, he stopped moving and he sunk, and he's looking down. And guys, if you're listening to the podcast on audio, you're missing out on my amazing facial expressions. So go over to YouTube, give us a like and subscribe, and share it with your friends.
He's got a good face too. Like not just for the expression.
It's a beautiful face for radio. And so, but you get this look and he's just like, oh, and he's sad because he hadn't made the shot and he sunk down.
Yeah.
And that's what we think of when we're going to sink. We're going to be sad when we get down. We're going to be sad when we have to tear this down. We have to stop moving. We just have to kind of accept where we're at for a moment. When the reality of it is, if we're not able to actually stop and acknowledge where we are, we're never going to be able to build back from it. We'll just be building upon a false plateau, a false ground, if you will, and it'll turn into something that isn't good. You will build for the wrong reasons. So being tore down is something you actually need to allow to happen before you can be built back up.
Yeah, it's good. This is so good. I'm very excited about this Conversations of Seasons because even as I start talking here, I'm like, oh man, we look in the New Testament, you watch the Apostle Paul talking about, Romans 12:1-2. I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service, and be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. And if you grew up like I did, it was like we were always seeking the perfect will of God. Like it was a future thing. Like we just have to get there. Like if we could just arrive. And now it's more of like, no, it's a very present thing. And I believe that God's going to work through your present obedience to glorify him in bigger ways. But I think the conversation here is we're talking about like a time to kill. I believe that there is a literal time to kill. We're not going to get into that, warfare and whether you believe in guns and kill the enemy. That's not the conversation today. But I do believe that you do have to die to self, and the person you're killing is your carnal self. And here's the thing, in the conversation about this guy who's going through this, there's potential divorce, there's kids, there's turmoil, and there's the grief of divorce. And I strongly believe that is one of the greatest griefs in the world, is people that are going through heavy breakups with people that have said, I don't want to be with you anymore. I don't want to be married to you anymore. That's a heavy grief. That is something that you have to work through that. But our response a lot of times is, well, I wasn't worthy to earn their love, so I'm going to do what it takes to earn their love. And by the way, I get that. We want to fight through it. We are men. We want to put on the whole armor of ourself and go out to battle. But it's not a spiritual battle. It's a carnal battle, because it's not for the glory of God. It is for the glory and self-satisfaction of, look who I am and look what I did. Now, I'm not saying not to be the best version of yourself. I think that is an opportunity that God gives us to be able to grow and to be the best version of ourselves. I think that spiritual maturity and I think the ability to grow is huge. But we're talking about a time to tear down. You're going to tear down the idols that you have built of what you thought your marriage would be, your future would be, yourself would be, your whatever it is that you've put on the idol. If there's anything between you and God, it is your obligation, your opportunity, your privilege. It is necessary for you to tear that down and put God in its place. So as we're talking about tearing things down, there are strongholds in our life. And I'm not talking about, and maybe maybe you have different spiritual strongholds. Maybe there's pornography, or maybe there's some secret sin that you've built a stronghold in, or you've allowed the devil to build a stronghold in your life by choice. That's not actually what I'm referring to, though, even though that's a thing. Some of us have built strongholds in our relationships, in our pride, in our career, our pride in, our ministry that we serve, or whatever it is. I want to make sure church can be a good thing until it becomes between you and God. Ministry can be a good thing. Service. I was writing on this earlier this week because I was convicted. I have put serving as on a pedestal of, this is the way that I'm going to worship God, is by serving. Now, I believe that you absolutely can worship God by serving. But I believe if you replace the worship of God with serving versus the worship of God, then you need to tear that down, that serving mindset. I'm not saying stop serving. Stop making serving your idol.
Yeah.
Because we do that. We do the Mary Martha thing where, well, why aren't they serving and I'm just doing? No. Part of your relationship with God is sitting. So in the challenge here, part of the teardown is you being able to have a mirror conversation where you are self-reflecting and saying, okay, what things have I allowed in my life, including to pull myself up by the bootstraps and hustle through it? And I can, no, hold on. Where's your faith? Where's your God? Because some things God's going to put you in a place where you can't hustle through it. You have to faith walk through it where there is no answer, and you're knocking on doors and you're trying to see what God wants. This is where we're tearing down that mindset of, I can do this. No. I can do this through Christ who strengtheneth me. Without him, I am nothing. That's where we're tearing down.
Oh, man, that is so awesome. It goes back to our beliefs of Jehovah Jireh and provider. Can God provide even though I'm not liking how he's providing? Can he provide not just physically and finances or health, but can he provide spiritually and emotionally for me? Because you said it, we want to rebuild. We want to come back from something. We want to grow. And again, not against those things, but why? And where's it coming from? Is it because God needs you to grow so he can use you? There's something to be said of becoming who God's made you to be. But let's not forget, when we go to the table with God, we're not bringing anything to negotiate with.
So good.
We are not coming and saying, okay, God, I've now got my doctorate. I've got my certifications. I've got this. I've done that. And here's everything that you can now use for your glory. Because I wonder if that conversation, you go to the table, you lay it all out and say, okay, God, how do you want to use these things? And then he looks at you and says, that's really cool. Whoosh, clears the plate and goes, none of it. I want you to go to be a janitor at a high school. And we're like, whoa. Okay, but God, wait, I wanted, no. What was it about? See, that's why we're afraid of the Newtonian fluid and to stop moving, because we're not trusting what God wants for us. We want just what we want for us. And to not have that would put us into a place of fear, a place of anxiety. Seeking the Lord and waiting for him is one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do. I'm in the season of it right now. And it's one of the most difficult things I've had to do. And God's tearing some things down in me. But this has been a great time to really learn Jehovah Jireh. Physical needs are provided for, and trust in him to provide spiritually for me, even when I don't feel like I can do it myself. And guys, you're going to go through times like this, fights with the wife, children that may go astray, or times when your children and your relationships are strained. It's these times where it doesn't feel good. And instead of just trying to fix it all, maybe sit with what's happening and go to the Lord on it. And ask him, God, you've got to fix this. I can't. And then even ask God, what in me needs to be removed or tore down for this to be rebuilt? What needs to be killed so that we can bring life to this situation now? Yeah. There's a lot of things we could go to and get in specifics of like habits you could get away with, you need to let go of. Ultimately, Luke said serving can become a thing that needs to die. It's whatever is unhealthy. It's whatever is keeping you in a poor relationship with God, whatever's hurting your growth with him. It could be the check boxes you're putting on the Bible app every day, because you've got to get the check box, because it makes you feel like you're bringing something to the table for God. Sometimes I think we just need to stop and say, God, I've got nothing. I am nothing. And without you, I can do nothing. And whether you know it or not, that's Bible. And just let him work. Sit in the quicksand. Let him do his thing. And then when he's ready, he'll move you forward.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to take longer than you want it to.
I think, man, if we could just touch on the timeline, I think there's so many of the seasons we're gonna overlap, and I don't want to steal this one, but I think it's good. I heard this earlier. I didn't come up with this on my own. I got it on the Instagram reel from some pastor that I don't know, but it was good, so I'm gonna share it. Copyright intended. Anyway, so
pastor we don't know, but
yes,
sorry.
Yeah, he was having a podcast with multiple other pastors, and they were sharing this thing on timeline and how, so many times we've kind of written out our timeline in the season that we're in. We're like, and I've done this before. We're like, even a season of grief, where I'm like, well, when I get through this season of grief, and then when God does A, B, C, then things are going to be as they should. I just want to kind of push on that in the seasons you're going through, and the mindset of sacrifice, of understanding I'm going to surrender the outcome. That's I think that's my challenge for the year, is surrender, like do what I should and surrender the outcome. And I don't like to surrender the outcome. I like to do what I should and then overplan and overdo whatever I can to make sure I control the outcome. I have a control issue. If you had asked me that 6 months ago, I would never have said I have a control issue, but I absolutely have a control issue, which makes me have an issue with faith, meaning that I want to control the timeline, the outcome, the narrative, the perspective, the social media story. I want to make sure people, when they see this, and I was doing it for good reasons. I want God to get the glory, but I want to get him to get the glory my way. Mary and Martha have a brother named Lazarus. Lazarus is about to die. John chapter 11 says there was certain sisters, right? A certain man whose name was Lazarus of Bethany, town of Mary and Martha, are sisters. So we know the story, right? They go, and it said this, it says, his sisters sent news to Jesus. Jesus is far away. They say, Jesus, saying, Lord, behold, he whom thou lovest is sick. Like, hey, Jesus loves Lazarus. They know this. Say, Jesus, you can save him. This was an act of faith to call on Jesus to have him solve their problem. This is not a bad thing they did. But then Jesus said this, is when Jesus heard that, he said, this sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God might be glorified thereby. Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. I love that verse. Jesus is like, hey, he's not unto death. He's not unto death because Jesus knew the outcome, but they didn't. And then it says, hey, Jesus loved him. And in the love of Jesus, he lets and allows Lazarus to die. In fact, he tarries 2 days. Do you think those 2 days in Mary and Martha's timeline were anything that they'd approved of? Like if you said, okay, well, can Jesus do? Nope, no, that's not the timeline. I want him here today so he can solve my problem and he can be Jesus and we're going to give him the glory because he's God and he's going to save Lazarus. They didn't want to take the glory from Jesus, but Jesus was like, no, I'm going to get more glory. My Father's going to get more glory in my timeline, which is going to be painful in your timeline. We go through life and call it grief, call it loss of someone, loss of a job, whatever it is. We've had some people at our church who have been, since last August, have been looking for a job and literally been praying together. He actually got a job. This he's coming up, starts on this next week, and he was texting me about it because we've been praying together about this. It's something I've been bothering God about. But the timeline that he chose to get a job was like, he lost a job in August. He wanted it in October. It is now May. It is not his timeline that he would have chosen, yet God's getting the glory. And just because we can't see it in a season doesn't mean that God can't work in that season. In fact, most of the time, if you chose the timeline, God couldn't get the glory, not to the level that he should. Because then Jesus comes a couple of days later and he weeps because he feels the emotion, he feels the loss. He also knows what's about to happen. And he calls Lazarus forth. And here comes Lazarus out of the tomb. And Lazarus is like, what's up, man? Why'd you do that? I was just in heaven. Like, that was the cruel. No, okay. But the concept is that we have this timeline that we're just like, this season, God, if you could condense this season to be a shorter season, that would be great. But seasons are not like that. That's why we're talking about seasons and really want the challenge to be, how are you growing through the season you're in? And I'm not talking about growing and becoming this super macho Christian. I'm talking about this person who's grown in their faith and walks with God, because without faith, it's impossible to please God. So if you're having to walk by faith in your season right now on the build or the teardown, congratulations, you're pleasing God. This is awesome. This is not meant to be. It's just meant to give God the glory. So take a different perspective there.
Absolutely. And it's not always fun. I think if we had more of an agricultural culture, we'd probably understand the seasonality of this a lot better. It's only in the past 100 years or so that the majority of people haven't been involved in agriculture of some sense. With the advancement of the Industrial Revolution, the various things that came from that, we got refrigerators, and thank God for air conditioners, very happy about all this stuff, where it was store food, and then the factories, and then of course we have processed food and faked food and food dyes and all this stuff, and 100% tastes like strawberries, which means it has 0% actual strawberries in it, right? So we've got a ton of things here. But with all of that, we have fallen prey to, and we've done this in churches with disciple making, we've done it in our lives, we've fallen prey to this idea of being efficient rather than being effective. And efficiency shortens things. How I want it done quick, and I want it done well, and I need it to be done quicker, even if it's not done as well, because we need to move on to the next thing. Because if I can get ahead, well, then next week I can rest. When in reality, I'm not going to rest. I'm just going to keep trying to get ahead of this imaginary, marker I've built in my life. And but when a farmer plants, he doesn't get to come out the next day and be like, okay, I'm going to be efficient in this. I've planted it today. I'll water it tomorrow, and I'll pull it the next day. It is a plant, and then water and weed and wait, and keep watering and de-weeding and watering and de-weeding and waiting. And then in due season, he reaps the harvest. We've forgotten how to wait. We've forgotten what it means to be effective, even if it's not efficient. Because truthfully, when it comes to our spirituality, when it comes to our walk with Christ, he doesn't call us to be effective. He doesn't call us to be efficient. He calls us to be effective. But he's only going to be effective when we stop trying to be efficient. I think of the teardown, Luke, and I'm reminded of boot camp. That's the whole purpose of the first few weeks of boot camp, really the whole 12 weeks from Marine Corps boot camp, is to tear you down. These luscious locks that I have and I'm quickly losing, at one point during that 12 weeks, they were all gone. And can I tell you, when I sat down in that barber's chair to get that hair cut off, he did not ask me how I felt, how my day was going. Was the worst customer service. 0 out of 10. Don't recommend. He took that.
You didn't leave a tip, did you?
I did not leave a tip. I had a few tips I would have given him, but it wasn't financial. And he just starts ripping back through my hair. And they tell you, like, when you're in line, hey, if you got a mole or something you don't want removed, you should tell us. But if you don't, they're just ripping it. It's gone. It's gone. You walk away and you're bald, right? And for those of us that have never been bald, and especially in high school, when I had golden, well, they weren't golden. Well, I did have blonde streaks at one point, and that's a picture that we can keep out of everyone's head. But
can we get that photo? I think we need this.
Man, I got prom photos, man. I had it. Yeah, blonde streaks. I've even got pictures of when Sarah cornrowed my hair once, and so
my word,
yeah, I look awful.
That's embarrassing.
I look like a pale ghost. It was awful, but. Anyways, so I'm there. I get the head shaved, and you walk away, and you get torn down. So that's just a physical aspect of it. It plays with your psyche, but then you're getting yelled and screamed at. And you're not getting a lot of sleep, and every little thing you do is being critiqued. And they're trying to get everything you once were away from you, so that they can build you back up as a United States Marine. While the process might not be as intense as 12 weeks, it could be just as intense, but over a period of months or even years. And while the Marine Corps has systematized it to 12 weeks, there's no system here. This is your surrender. And this is allowing yourself to be torn down so that you can be built back up. But what does it look like to be built back up in those moments? How do you, because this is the question I can see in your mind. what do I do? I'm tore down. I'm being tore down. What do I do to get built back up?
Yeah.
Luke, I'm going to turn it over to you on that one. And then, because I got an answer, but I want to hear your thoughts. What can someone do to be on their way back up the mountain from the valley?
Yeah. I've got my answer. I'm curious what yours is. I think, and again, this is impromptu. We've really made this so that we can just have a spiritual conversation. And a lot of this is where we're at right now. And I think right now I am looking at my spiritual life and walk with the Lord. And I've been spiritually challenged in the last couple months. Like I've been spiritually challenged all my life. God always wants you to grow, but there's just been some things where I've been pushed and really molded as the clay in a way that I don't want to be molded. Like I don't like what God is doing in my life because it's painful, but where he pushes and it's painful, there's the opportunity. If you go to the doctor does something, that does a test and it hurts, it's not supposed to hurt there. So if it hurts there, that is an opportunity for you to get on the altar, pick up your cross, however you want to verbalize it, right? Put it into words. It is a place where God wants to have full surrender. And I oftentimes don't want to give God full surrender. I want to do what I want and then hold on to it and then say, okay, well, God, I'll give it to you when I'm ready. Well, that's not faith. That's the control. And so I think for me, it's very much a self-evaluation, self-assessment. If I want to get closer to God, I have to know where I'm at with God. Now, I'm not talking about where I am in identity with Christ. I am looked at by God. I am a friend of God. I am looked at as a child of God and the father aspect of it. So hear me out here. There is things in your life, behaviors, attitudes. And for me, it was literally hiding behind the shield of service where I'm like, I'm going to serve through this grief. I'm going to repurpose my grief. I'm going to repurpose my life to make sure that everything is just kind of formulated in a way where it's like, oh, well, it's for God, but it's my narrative versus God's like, no. There's not been the sitting. There's not been the real processing of things. And I believe self-assessment is crucial because to know where you're at spiritually, and I think there's all sorts of assessments out there, personality assessments. I think they're good. I don't get me wrong. But a spiritual assessment that says, where am I at with God right now? What is God asking me to do that I'm not doing? What is God asking me to stop, to tear down that I am doing and need to stop? Like, what is it? Is it conversations? Is it gossip? Is it service without glorification of God, where it's just service for you to hide behind a shield, where you know service is good, so you're going to make it look holy and be holy, but it's not for God, it's for you to hide behind service or to avoid sitting in church. Whatever it is, it's a problem, right? So, but in this concept, and I say that a little bit facetiously, but somebody heard that was like, oh, he's talking to me. No, God's talking to you through me, and praise the Lord for it. And so in the process of this, just being able to look, hey, where am I at? Do that self-evaluation of what is God asking me to do right now in faith? Because if you're on easy street right now and everything's like, well, everything's just checking boxes, go to church, what ABC 1, 2, 3, and go to work. And if everything's perfect, are you really? And by the way, I understand that there is comfort, but comfort is the enemy of faith. Comfort is not. If you're comfortable, I gotta be careful because I'm like leery of saying this, but if you're comfortable, are you walking with God the way that God wants you to walk with him right now? Or are you just riding the roller coaster? It can go up and down and be exciting and you can get the spiritual highs and spiritual lows, but what is God asking you to do with your coworkers, with sharing the gospel, with a missions opportunity, with your giving, with your walk with the Lord, with your kids, with your wife, where is the inconvenience of the cross that you're going to pick up and say, this is going to draw me closer to God, not because of what I am doing, but because it's an obedience factor in faith. That's where I'd start.
I love that one. For me, I wanted to say that part of the question, in the question lies the problem for most of us. Mm-hmm. What can I do?
No.
What do I need to do? Nothing. And that is the hardest thing for a leader. That's the hardest thing for a man, to sit back and say, well, I can't I can't change my heart the way God can. I can't make this season go away. I can learn and grow. And I think there'll be a time where you kind of wake up and, oh, I got it. And it didn't happen overnight. No, it's like an overnight success. Where I say working on it, because surrender is a daily thing.
Right.
I'm 37 and I was playing basketball with a youth group a few weeks ago. And I did what every responsible 37-year-old does before they play basketball with a bunch of teenagers. I did not stretch. I just jumped in there and started playing ball because I'm 37 and I can dominate these kids. First off, I couldn't. One of them has a crazy three-pointer, and the other one, I'm 5'8", so it's not like this is a huge accomplishment in his life, but he's taller than I am. And so driving past me and putting one up for a layup was not hard, okay? But ball handling skills, I could kind of compete with. So I'm there, I'm going after the ball for defense, and something happens, and the next thing I know, I'm laying on the ground, grabbing my hamstring, and staying as silent as possible. Because it's in those moments our Christianity
that is code for he was screaming like a girl. That is exactly, not that that's a bad thing, it's just a thing.
It was grunting, and it was just like trying to set a good example for the teens that were there. They didn't need to hear anything that could have come out, But no, in all seriousness, though, I'm laying there, I'm hurting. And I am hurting. And I've got to teach in like 20 minutes. And so I pulled my hamstring. And so I came home that night, I rested. And the next day I got up and I was going to the gym, and it was supposed to be leg day. Can I tell you what I didn't work that day? Legs. And you're like, well, and then it kept hurting for more than a week. And I missed my leg days again because I have 2 in a week. And, I'm sitting here like, okay, what can I do? I can ice it. I can stretch it. And I can ice and stretch it for 8 hours in a day. But the muscles got to heal. And it's just going to take time. There are things I can do in the process of healing that will help it once it heals and might speed up the process as it relates to the muscle or make it feel a little better. But ultimately, that muscle is just got to take some time to heal. And sometimes our bodies are in a place to where that doesn't happen. I had a conversation with the guy who hurt his arm, and it wasn't healing well. And he started having some other issues. And he went and got tested and told me just whatever day we're recording, the Wednesday of this week, he said, yeah, he prayed for me. My white blood cell count is basically non-existent. And there's other things that are off in my readings from this. Like, yeah, man, I'm so sorry. Well, keep me updated with the news. So then there's something wrong in the body that's keeping it from being able to heal. In both scenarios, there's really nothing you can do. It's just going to happen, and it's going to happen in God's time. Mm-hmm. There are things you can do to prevent the healing, though. So with my hamstring, had I decided that I was going to play basketball a couple days later, I would have ended up hurting myself again, more severely. Because instead of stopping and allowing it to hurt, because it did every time I walked, and waiting for it to heal, to be ready to get back in the game, I would have been trying to rebuild it myself. Guys, your heart, your mind, whatever it is that has been tore down or needs to be tore down, you can try all you want to rebuild it. But if you try to rebuild it alone and in your time, it will be weaker than what it started as. But if you wait and you allow the Lord to rebuild it in His time, you can do things that will help it be stronger once you're done. But if you try to rush it, you're going to be weaker than when you started. It's good to tear things down. It's good to get rebuilt. It's hard to accept that God's doing the rebuilding and you're just part of the process.
Yeah. For your good and for His glory. It's this concept of, we're talking about waiting, and I think I think literally we'll talk about the season of waiting here in the next couple weeks here. But when you're waiting is an act of faith. Now, faith is an action and needs to, because faith without works is dead. And a lot of times we want to stand in faith and fight in faith and walk in faith, and those are all good action words to represent our run, our doing what we're supposed to do. But a lot of faith is you sitting back and letting God fight while you're doing what you should do. So don't stop doing what you should do. And just going to go into, as we kind of wrap this up, this concept of look in your life and do that self-reflection of, hey, what is something in your life that God is asking you to tear down and you have been ignoring him? What is something that needs to come down, something that you need to hunt and kill? And it's your carnal self. And on the flip side of it, you may not know what he's going to build up because he can't start building until you've torn it down. And so if you constantly want to have that thing there, that structure, you're like, but God, I built this on my own. God's got something so much better for you. The concept of waiting, the word waiting, if you go back to the Hebrew, and I'm not a language person in the sense of this, I just know the word wait in the Hebrew language means to intertwine. It's not just like a clock where we're just waiting. It's kind of a loop in. Those that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. Those that intertwine with the Lord. It's almost like you're in a 3-legged race. It's a lot more difficult. I can run way, way fast by myself. Well, let me rephrase that. I can run faster than somebody who's doing a 3-legged race by myself, right? and I can run faster than Dustin right now because he's got a 20 hamstring. So we're great.
Hey, there you go. There you go.
So the concept here is I can run faster on my own, but that doesn't mean that's how it's supposed to be run. A 3-legged race is meant to be run together. And when Jesus says, hey, my yoke is easy, my burden is light, that's a together thing. You can go as far fast as you want on your own, but you're not going to get anything done. I want to do it with Christ, intertwined in the waiting and the season of, hey, I might need to embrace the pause, the Selah, and say, okay, I'm going to reflect on what God's doing. I'm going to reflect on what God wants me to do. And I can't see the future, but I certainly can trust the God who's going to build up and use a season of building to build something that glorifies him. And that's our opportunity as we go through the seasons of, okay, I'm in a season of deconstruction. That means removing things that are not of God. I'm in a season of construction. That means I'm adding things that are of God. So we look at the fruit of the Spirit. There's so many, we're not getting the nitty gritty here, but the conversation is we need to look and see, what is it? Am I in a season of tearing down? Or is this a season of building? But if I'm the one doing the building, it's all about me and my workouts and my knowledge and where's God in that? No. What does God want me to add to my life? And that is where we're going to walk through these seasons over the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. Guys, before we sign off, let me give you 3 quick actionable steps to take as we walk away from here. No matter the season of either tearing down or building up, there's 3 things you can do. First off, self-assess. What season are you in? What's actually happening around you and inside of you? What's going on with your heart and your mind? Where's your focus at? Evaluate those things. Then find counsel, get mentors, trusted advisors and friends that can give you a perspective on life and situation and maybe see things in you that you don't see. Then set some clear goals, some things that you can be doing to help the process of rebuilding, action steps that you can take, whether it is to tear down or it is to build up. Set some goals that you can be working towards. And remember, be a participant in the process, but surrender the outcome. God's got it. He'll take care of it. And in due time, you'll reap the harvest. I don't know how long that time is. I just know the one who does. And I have to trust him. And that's not easy. You're going to have days where it's hard. You'll have days of emotional distress, but you'll have days of the highs too. For your family, for your ministry, for those around you, show up each time. I'm not telling you to show up and act and tell them everything's okay, but a leader is one who can show up for others even when things are going wrong in his own life. You can be there for them. And that is us living our faith. Someone asked me one time in recent months and said, hey, are you okay? And, we often say, hey, how you doing? I go, I'm good. And then you get someone who can actually ask, hey, how are you really doing? It was one of those questions like, hey, are you okay? And I had to tell them, I said, I'm not okay right now, but I will be. I don't know exactly when, but I will be. Because with my hamstring, to close it out with that story, I was hurting for days, a couple weeks, really. I couldn't go back to gym. I couldn't really do anything. And then it just hit me, and it was honestly like a couple days ago. It hit me that my hamstring didn't hurt. I was walking without a limp. Everything was fine. And I had to actually consciously remind myself, oh yeah, I had hurt that before. There'll be a time where you'll look back and say, oh yeah, that used to hurt. I used to have a hard time with that, but now it's so different. and it's just going to happen. And you will be that person that God's molding you into. But unfortunately, you don't get to decide that timeline. I say unfortunately, but truthfully, it's better to be on his timeline. So guys, buckle up. This series is going to be amazing as we talk about these seasons of life. If we go through Ecclesiastes and we see the contrasting seasons that are there, and we're going to talk about how to work through both the positive and the negative as we had today. And if there's ever any questions, you can always reach out at info@menaftergod.net. We'd love to connect with you. Go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Men After God Podcast, and you can connect with us there. And then, as always, we'd love for you to like, subscribe, share this with a friend, and let them know that there's a group of men out there that'd be happy to pray for them. And guys, just keep moving forward. Trust the Lord and become the man that God made you to be. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Men After God podcast. We hope today's discussion has encouraged and equipped you on your journey. We'd love to hear from you. If you have questions, comments, or would like to partner with us, please reach out at support@menaftergod.net. Stay connected with our community by liking our Facebook page at facebook.com/menaftergodpodcast. For deeper engagement, join our group at facebook.com/groups/menaftergod and connect with other men pursuing God's heart. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. Your feedback helps us reach more men striving to live faithfully. Until next time, stay strong in the faith and continue pursuing after God.